Hi, good morning to all of you. So we'll continue with our integration of the node. For doing that integration, we are preparing some of the components inside the TS server. We call it as TS server because it's a TS TypeScript. TS is for TypeScript, and it is acting as going to act as a server as well. So it is a microservices. So microservices, the concept of microservices being like it doesn't do very big activities. It does like insert, delete, all that activity it does. It doesn't do a big activity of any big processing or anything. That is what the microservices is all about. So that it consumes less uh, resources of the we call it as hardware. So less resources of the hardware it will use. That is the idea behind. So I'm going back to this Visual Studio Code. So yesterday we were creating the data that is in the controller. So in controller we had a class and we created a check DB. So the main purpose of this DB check is it will check whether the DB is existing and we are able to connect or not. If we are able to connect it, it will give the return the message. If we are not able to connect it, so basically it doesn't have to return anything. It just have to settle. I don't need any return actually for this because it has to set a variable. That is our aim. It doesn't have to return anything. It is a void. We call that particular script. So that script runs and it results. And if DB is true, it will update this particular field to DB connected field to true.
Sir,
If yes, screen share.
can you please?
Sorry, I'm sharing the screen now. Sorry. Okay. So I'm shared my screen. Please confirm once you are able to see the screen. I'm in the Visual Studio Code now.
Yes,
So I
sir.
just removed that return command. Previously, there was a return command here. This command, I just removed it because in this case, we don't need a return. So we just remove that return from here. Is what I just did. So because what I need is as soon as the DB check DB is done, if DB is able to connect it, that means result dot success, then this DB connected will become true and DB check running becomes false. That means it is not anymore checking, it come out of the loop. So it comes out of this function. That means it is freed up from this function. If not, I'll come here. Is DB checking becomes true? Yes, it is true. And I'm another 30 seconds it will wait. It will check the DB again. That means this will be continuously checking the DB until the DB is connected. As soon as DB, this is called recursive function. I'm calling the same function from inside. I'm calling the same function every 30 seconds until DB is up and running. This is for connection error. If there is a connection error, I'm checking the DB. If there is no connection error, I'm not checking the DB. I will continue to query error. I'm not bothered. Query error will be returned as DB connected true. So I have a success. If success is true, if connection error is true, or success is false. That means I'll be here. That means it's a query related error. So ultimately, I'm setting this variable. So this variable, I want to take it out. That is why I did a get. Get is DB connected. I'm taking this variable out. Is DB connected. I can treat it as a property as well. Property means in our get set property. Using that, we can do that. I'll give you as an example. So you create a class in such a way, use the get set property, set the DB is DB connected property with the true or false according to the value of the command. I'll leave it to you as part of the exercise. So I'm using a method get is DB connected. In case if DB is connected is false, I'm triggering this check DB, but I'm returning immediately. This is a return value. The return value is a boolean and it is returning the value. I created a class now. this class, I want to, whenever before I call any DB command, I just want to ensure DB is connected. If DB is not connected, I don't want to execute the query. That is the aim. So in API, now I don't need all this. I'll put it in a different way now. Initialize can be there, that's not an issue. So initialize, but I don't want inside the initialize, I don't want this. So API is loaded. So I don't need a P because I don't want to connect the PSQL, that reusable function from here. So it should call the controller. So I load the controller here now. So I load the controller modules. Now I am in API. API is part of the API directory, route directory. So from route directory, I need to go to controller. So double dot, I can see a controller. In controller, I need to use common controller. I need to check the class, control space. I get the list of that class. All the class, I'll get the list. Shift Alt F to reorganize the. Now, having said that, I need to instantiate the class because it's a class. I need to instantiate the class. So CMN control. I use this word. Let or constant. In this case, constant will do because I don't want accidentally anybody to change this. New of common controller because it's a class name. There is no constructor. Because of that, I don't need to use any of the parameter here. It is a dummy. So common control is initialized now. I now initialize. First is I want to check the DB first. So check the DB. So I can also keep here one more variable. This is for my local variable here. So or I can every time I can call it from the controller. Anything is okay. So I don't. So first is I just want to initialize this. So common control dot check DB. I just check this DB because somebody has to initialize that candidate to load it. So I'm initializing from here. So as soon as the webbook is loaded, now this initialization will take care of that and it initializes the variable. I save it. I already started the service. It will loading the service now. FS project is connected. So I'm initializing the project. So I don't know. There is no variable here. I'll just go back here, common control. Here I'll just put the console log. Console log DB connected. DB connected. Here console log could not connect to DB. Will retry. Will retry in 30 seconds. Right? So here I'll say console log. This is a never happening event, okay? Because this query here only check DB and the query is directly it will return. It's a never happening event. Still, I just put query error DB connected. I'll say DB connected. That's what my interest is. Connected query having error. I just say that, but it doesn't. It never happening event. This if this happens, it is a what you call. That means your base query itself, your check query itself is wrong. Anyway, so common DB. I now execute this. I save this. Save all. It is already done. So now you can see DB connected. So now because I put a console log, you got the DB connected. I make a query mistake. I make a query mistake here. Just see what it happens. It is in common control. So common DB. Here I just make a query mistake. Control FS. Query mistake. So let us see what it does. Connected, but query having error. That's it's just an additional information. That's it. But DB is connected. There is no problem with the DB. For connection failure, I will do it later. Physically, I have to either IP address or something I need to change. I will do that later. because I don't want to accidentally also expose my credentials to this community. So for time being, I want to play safe. So I will do it later. Okay, so we have done the first part. Now, as soon as the route is loaded, we are able to connect. What is our main aim? Our main aim is I want to register the page. So register is, it is like this. So router.use command is router is the command that we want to use. I just take syntax. For syntax, I just take from some project. Just take the syntax. Any project I can take for that matter. Not here. I'll open a new window. There are multiple routing. One is post, get, put, delete. All these are common methods available in HTTP. These are all some of the common methods. I'll just go to some place, some API to just collect the route. I'll just take one syntax of the route. Later we'll code it. So this is the syntax. Right? So this syntax, I'll use it here. So end curly braces, end router.use. So here I will change it as register. So this is a post register because I'm receiving the data as a post parameter. So get, post, put, delete, all these are proper methods available as part of HTML. Sorry, HTTP request. HTTP methods are all get. Get means I only can get. Query parameter can be passed. So post is the normal thing that is mostly used. We only use post or get. We don't use put. We don't use delete, direct delete. We don't use all these methods as part of the routing. This is controlled through the security so that accidental deletion or anything we avoid in the code. So these are all part of the security we need to do that. I'm not coming into that now. So this is my routing. So this routing is enabled. How it got enabled? This is enabled through index.ts, that is the entry point, because this is where I'm listening. So as soon as come here, I should have that API route. If API route is there, it will redirect to route API. So it will redirect to this API. Here, this method has to be there. If this method is there, that means API/register, I'll come here. What I'll do for time being is, I just say JSON, response. RES is the response. Response dot JSON. I return the success true message received your request. I just give this. How do I test this? I just make router.post one register. I have not yet written the code for actually registering the data in our DB. I'm just making sure the routing works. So the routing works. So register, I come, so /API/register is the endpoint I need to use. The port that is exposed is 6000 port. You notice that I'm using a 6000 port. So how do I test it? That is called Postman. You can download Postman. It is very, very good tool for API testing. I'm doing an API testing because microservices, ours is on microservices, which is an API. Right? It is an API. So I create one more separate thing. All my projects are in my microservices. So I have so many commands for every method that will go through this unit testing. Whatever we create in the project, it goes through the unit testing. I create a new thing, new container. They call this as a container. So I collection, sorry, not container, collection. So I create a new collection. I rename this collection as upskill. All the methods, whatever we create, that can be tested here. Upskill is my collection. Inside this collection, I want to create a request. Right? Add a request. I can add a request. I can rename the request. So in my case, register. Register, usually I give the method name itself. Post is the command. HTTP, there is no HTTPS. Localhost colon 600. This is my entry point, my server entry point. This is, we call this as domain. So localhost colon 6000 is my server entry point. API is my route. Register is my data. Register is my method name. Since it is a post request, I need to give a body, or if I don't, this post, and in my code, this post has to match. This post and this post has to match. So post, here also post. If I use get here, I need to use get here. These are all the methods supported by the HTTP. Get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head, options, link, unlink, purge, lock, unlock, property find, view. All these are available, but we generally restrict ourselves to get and post, so that no other commands or all other commands are rejected, so that our system is secured. So suppose whatever you give here, that should match here. Router dot. So it should also match to whatever the event that you call here. So in our case, post, so I'm using post here. So there is no physical value I'm sending. I'm just triggering send. So it says 404 not find. So API register 404 not find is the, so localhost 6000 HTTP is the request. So service is running or not? Yes, service is running, but I am not getting the request. Well, let us see that. So register is the command. Yeah. API, oh, save. I have not saved this, unfortunately. So I have not saved it now. So I saved it now. So it is DB connected. I send this request now. Now you can see true, received your request. So this is how your node server or services is being tested. It's a service. We call it as a service. Node service is just getting tested now through this mode. So localhost 6000, actually now node is acting as a service cum server. So it can accept as many connections as possible. So 6000, I have connected to 6000, DB is connected. Now this connection is established. I got the response of 200. Size is 285K is the response size. I got the success true. Whatever I typed there, I got that message here. So I have multiple ways I can do it. This is one way of sending the response. Another way of sending the response is response dot send status. Send status, say whatever the status you want to send. I call it as 200. 200 is the general status that we send. Then if I let that get compiled, and if I send this, you will get OK, that's all. You don't get anything else. It is not a JSON response now. It's a plain text. It's a plain text. I received it as a content. So that is also possible. So you can use send also. Send, received text. Right? I can send this also. I saved it, compiling, and I just click on send. So I received text. This is a plain text. It is not a JSON, it's a plain text. Right? Generally, the rest.send is a security violation. So we generally use this. In case if I want to give a 400 error for some mistake, I need to do status packet 400, right? Bad request. I give here message bad request. This also possible. Bad request. I can give it success. I call it as false now. I can give this also. Send status bracket. So status code, whatever I want to send with the JSON content. So I can do that as well. Register, you get a 400 here. Status is 400, bad request. I give the message as bad request, success false. So connectivity is there still, but I am sending the response because your request, I validated your request is not correct. Because of that, I'm returning a bad request. So all this can be done through Postman. Postman is a very useful tool. You can use this tool for all your API based testing. So API based testing, we can use this tool. In Node, everything is considered as an API, right? We call it as a microservices. So I now come back. So we just created a route. We handle the route. Now I just don't do the spelling mistake. I just do a spelling mistake here, register 1. So this method in our route, it doesn't exist. So if I send here, you see a HTML content. 404 not found. That means this method is not there. All this response code details are available in global. So HTTP response codes, right? It is the big, you can go with what you call wiki also. All the details are available. A lot of people gives lot of information, right? 200, 201, 202, 203, 204, 205. You have so many things. 3xx redirection, 4xx client errors, bad request, unauthorized, payment required, forbidden, etc., etc. So you can, all these are standards available. You can check accordingly. This 411 is basically, this is where we check the length of the data. If our length of the data is very predefined, length cannot change so that nobody can hack it. So all that can be done here. 400 series, so many are there. 5xx series, right? These are all 5xx series. Unofficial codes, right? Unofficial means it is there, but nobody uses it. Nginx specific codes, Cloudflare specific codes, Elastic Load Balancer specific codes, right? All these are available, Wikipedia, everything is there, so that you don't send any wrong data anywhere. So you don't send a wrong status code. That is very important. You are not supposed to send a wrong status code. Okay. So all these are available. 429 too many requests. This is what we call it as rate limit. So that is comes under 429. It's a standard. So anywhere you call 429, we know that it is too many requests. That means I'm receiving too many requests from one IP address. Rate limit. So don't ever change these codes. Try to follow these codes. Explanations are given. So that is what this response is all about. So in my code, FS project, this response is all about that. So this is again an asynchronous operation. You want to respond, you need to do await or appropriate things. So that's why I use the asynchronous here. This asynchronous means this request, in case I deal with this request and response as my parameter. So post is having two parameter that is managed by Express. Express router manages that. So router, post, so request and response. So response I'm using in the code, that's why you don't have that underline. If I start using the request, you will get that information as well. So this is what the routing is all about. Now what we need to do is we are going to insert the record in the register. So we have the table. Yesterday I'll connect it through PuTTY again. I can connect it to PuTTY, I can connect it through DBviewer. Multiple possibilities are there. I'll go with PuTTY now. So this is my cloud environment. It is not available for you, please. These are all goes with the keys, etc. So right now, you don't have to worry about. So I just connected. I'll use this upskill. Yesterday we have created the table called upskill. database called upskill. I'm connecting to that upskill. It is connected. I created a table called /d table called users. So I go to that users to just show you the tables. So this is the table that we created. I want to insert the record inside this table. If I am able to insert the record inside this table, the service portion is completed. So how do I insert the data inside this table? So I go back to my model. So I go back to my Visual Studio. Any questions up to this, please let me know. If you have any questions, please let me know. Yeah, I come back to you. Any questions if you have, please let me know. If not, we'll just proceed further. Okay, nothing is there, so I'll just proceed. I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code. Now, in this route, before I complete the routing, I go to the user component. This is the user DB component, users DB component. I want to insert the register, that is user registration. So I want to register the user. So I create a method. This is the endpoint. Okay, this is the endpoint. Register. I just use the word register, and it should have a parameter. Either I can define the parameter one by one, or I just declare the param as any, so that I know what that param I'm using. So this param can be like, you can have a type declared, that is called interface, right? You can use the interface type and declare what type it has to follow. So I'm using any means any data it can come. But later you can define that what data you want to declare as well. So as we go, we can improve on that. That becomes more, what you call, you are following more rules appropriately. That means you cannot send any other type. The only difficulty is you cannot, on the fly, you cannot change the data. That's it. Anyway, you might have known all the query and all already. So I use the word constant, query text equals, I insert is my insert into, since it's are all commands, I can use capital. Table database is upskill, I know. Users is the table name, right? Within bracket, columns. I go back to the this one. ID is a auto insertion, so I'm not touching it. Email, I cut and paste because I don't want any mistake anywhere. Name, password. So this is the 3 columns I want to enter. Values, it's not a multi-line entry, it's a single line. One row at a time I will be entering. So values, since I'm using capital, I'll use the capitals here. Values. So email, I want to pass it as parameter now. Please remember, I'm not passing the variable here. If I pass the variable, I will have a problem of injection, SQL injection problem. So I should not pass the variable. I pass it as a parameter. So where is the value of the parameter? The next question is, how do I pass the value of the parameter? Constant query param. So the value is available underneath that param any. So parameter dot email, param dot name, param dot password. It's a plain password. I'm not doing any modifications now because our aim is to integrate this entire system back to back. Just to integrate. Because of that, I'm not worried about anything else. Okay. So query text is the input, query text is the output. So query param. So Q param, this is already taken care. So I just want to make sure the way we follow the data. So now I need to fn db query dot. I want to return this. Whatever I follow, I just want to return fn query method name register. Method name is a string, so I use the word register, not a variable. Query text qrytext. Query param qryparam. So here the param is not empty. Param is having some value. So that's all. My first it will insert the record. But how do I call this register? Who will call this register? So that is to be done by the controller, because as we said, DB model is the endpoint. So model only exposes to the DB connection. Nobody else is exposed to the DB connection. So we ensure that model is the only guy who is exposed to this DB connection. Nobody else should get into this DB connection. That is what we are ensuring. So we made a register. We inserted this command with this, and then we pass the parameter now param.email, because I'm assuming that this param has all this component. That is an assumption with which I'm following. Then I create the param. $1 is nothing but email. $2 is nothing but name. $3 is nothing but password. Please remember, we are not supposed to create the password in the plain text. It should be properly encoded or hashed, or properly some activity to be done. We'll learn that activity later. Our job is to end-to-end integration. We want to ensure that we are able to make it. Okay, so we have now node side, model side, we created a register. Perfect. Now this register, I want to use it from controller. So which controller I can use now? I don't want common controller, because common controller is, my purpose of common controller is it is used by across all the people. So I'll create one more controller file called user controller. Also I'm making it as a case sensitive, that is camel case, that is okay. So common controller. So anything I want to create it as a class. So I start with export class name user controller class name. Because it's a class name, I'm having U capital C capital. So class name followed by I think I copy this constructor here. So I copy this constructor. So user controller export class. I missed the class name. Export class controller, this one. So I do that. What he has to use. Now I want him to use the DB controller, right? So import from, so it is model. So model is two levels out, one level outside. So model, inside the model, I want to use user DB, not common DB. I want to use user DB. Inside the user DB, there is already a method created, user DB query. So I use that user DB query as my imported candidate here. So the first method that I want to create here is under the class method. Method is register. So register is the method, asynchronous. Register is the method. Parameter, yes, there is a parameter. Param colon any. So what it does, let result equals. So since I map that query, I need to instantiate that class. So constant. So user db equals new users db query. This is my instantiation. I have done that instantiation. Now user DB dot register already available. I'm passing the param as it is. So my result can be 3 results are possible. If result, right, dot success. Make sure await is used because I need to ensure that. So success. If result is success, I return now. What do you want to return? Success equal to true. We always follow the JSON syntax. So there is no change or there is no ambiguity here. All our services that we create, the response of the services is always JSON so that it is easy to code, easy to maintain. Right? Then row count. Always I pass this row count. So result dot row count. Then rows, result dot rows. Always I pass this outside. Else if I don't want if some problem, return success equal to true, false, message equals, so I call it as result dot message because that message I am passing. Whether it is a query error, whether it is a normal error, I am not bothered. If message is there, I just pass result dot message. Anything, I'm not worried about anything else. Right? So common control, I want to access it from everywhere. So when I want to call this query, I want to call this query only if my DB connection is through. Otherwise, I don't want to call this. So that is possible because that we have already added that as part of the API, that as part of the API route. So as part of the API route, I already have that variable here called check DB, right? So I can only do here itself. I can check if query, that is the common control. Common control is used. Common control dot get is DB connected. If it is true, right, you proceed further. If it is not true, I need to, it's a function. So here, put it here. So else, I can put it here itself. Response dot status. So I can say there is a non-availability of the DB. So non-availability is generally 401, not found, right? So or you can give appropriate error. 404 is also okay. 404 dot JSON. I call it as success false, right? Message DB failure, DB connection failure. After some time, I can just pass the message to the end user. So it is not appropriate to give 504. It is actually equivalent to crash 500 series. 500 series because there is a down, DB down. So this may not be a regular happening event. Once in a while, yes, it may happen. But what happens as soon as this function gets called, this function will continuously retry this check again and again. Because when DB is failed, automatically he will check the DB. Right? He will check the DB and he will try to connect. So when the new failure happens, it is part of the user controller. So here, where at this point, there is a possibility that the DB connection might have got failed. Possibility. If that possibility is there, then you can check if I just want to ensure if there is a DB failure or is it something. So result dot connection error. If there is any connection error, then I want to call that DB, check DB. It is not available here, so I just say import from. It is part of controller, so I am in the same controller only. So common controller, same hierarchy, common controller, constant, common controller, class instantiation, common controller. Now I just say, I just call that DB. If connection error, you just call get common control, right? Dot get DB connected. Just call this guy. That's all. In case of connection error, you just call this guy. This can be called in all places. Everywhere you can call this function now. That is why we said it is common. It is used by everybody. So only now important is common control should not use user DB. That you need to ensure. So if it calls user DB, you will get an error. Only in case of error, you are checking whether there is a connection error. If there is no connection error, you are not bothered. If there is a connection error, you are indirectly calling that function so that that will set and keep continuing to check the DB is there or not there. So with this, what we have done is, so register, param, everything we have got. Now we need to take that from the input. So we need to take it from the input. That is nothing but API.ts. In routing, now this request is having the data. So where the data is available as part of request.body. So request.body is holding the data. I just print now console log. Before I call anything, I just print console log request.body. Now, having said that, here I'll just say 200 requests received. Request received. I just console in the server. I'm just putting the console, or I can just pass that body itself here as part of the response. That is, but not advisable. That is okay. So console log request.body. I'm just, because this is where this request is holding the body content. Let us see this. What should be the content? Email, name, password. That is my content. Go to Postman, go to body, go to raw, make it as a JSON, right? Create a JSON now. Email, so any email. So abc@gmail.com. Right? Make sure everything is within quoted, that is stringified. Then name, the same name that we use there, name property. So my name, right? Then I have a password within quotes, all within quotes, password colon my. So I'll say password itself. So this is my JSON string now. So I go to raw body content, select the body content because it is part of post. In that raw table, in that type is JSON. So that is important. When I type this JSON, automatically the header gets added. That is nothing but application.json, content type application.json. As soon as I type here, he will add that header there. So when I say raw and JSON type, I now inserted the JSON type. Now my Postman request is ready. So that Postman request, now I will receive it as part of the console log now. Let us see that. Send. So 2404 found. So because register 1, I remove that register. I remove that 1 from that register. Send. Now you can see request received. Success is false. That is okay. Undefined. I have not defined that. Undefined I've got. That one change I need to do. That change is very important. That is nothing but JSON content. I need to treat that routing. I have to tell the router that all I'm receiving is the JSON record. So I need to tell the router. So that is conveyed at this FS project. So that is to be, otherwise he doesn't recognize this request. He didn't recognize this request. That's why he got the, so this is true. So that is why he has got this as empty. To make it as body in index.ts, I need to add two components. I'll add it from here. That is the syntax, all same. This two. So I need to tell that express that my content is all JSON. So I just add this content over here. Again, it is an app.use. So I don't want more than 1 MB of data to flow through. So I just limit. I just say it is content is JSON limit. This I need to add to tell that express all you are dealing with is a express. That is called express promise router. That is also possible to convert that into body. We'll just check that. Now I am commented. I saved the file. I again send. You got the true. Check whether you received the body or not. So still body is not received. That means we have to use the express promise router. Express promise router is another candidate which I have already added in part of the code. So I have already added. So we'll see that tomorrow. So ultimately you need to get inside this console log, this request I need to able to recognize the body. If I just print the entire request now. I just saved it. Entire request, you can print it and check as well. You can see the entire request. So whatever the content is, you will see it. Here you will not see the actual body content here. That is why we need to do little bit of change. That change is nothing but promise router. Right? We'll do that as part of the next session, that is tomorrow or Monday. So this is the entire request. Okay. So we'll see that in our next session. So make sure you understand all this by repeating this again and again so that you understand each and every component of this, and then try to, whatever is possible, try to understand. You don't have to understand each and everything, but try to understand because it helps you to debug. Okay, fine. Thank you. Thanks a lot.